Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for being here tonight. For those of you that don't know me or have not met me yet, my name is Chris Paul. I'm the CEO of Hercules Metals Corp. I'm sure a lot of you are probably familiar with the Hercules project at this stage and our backstory, but tonight I'm here to introduce you to our partner on the exploration, which is Barrick Gold Corp. And they've also been, they've been helping us out. They made a strong investment into Hercules at the end of last year. They've been helping us out quite a bit on the technical side of our exploration, but they've been doing a lot of their own exploration as well. So at the last town hall, we heard some questions being asked about, who some of the other companies are in the district, and Barrick heard that loud and clear. So they wanted to be here. They wanted the opportunity to be able to communicate a little bit about what they're doing and be able to answer some questions that people might have about, exactly what's going on with Barrick's work in the district. So, again, I'm sure a lot of you are probably getting familiar at this stage with the Hercules story, but for those of you that might not be familiar, this was a silver project for a very long time, and had a lot of holes, over 300 holes drilled in the 1960s through the 1980s. And we picked up the project in 2021, ultimately drilled the first deep hole that had ever been drilled out here last year, and discovered that there was a large copper deposit, a very special type of copper deposit called the copper porphyry. These are very, very unique systems that you only get in certain parts of the world. And there's never been one discovered in Idaho before. In fact, if you look at the United States, there's really only one state that really is known for their copper porphyries, and that's Arizona. So to discover new copper porphyry in Idaho was a very significant thing. The special thing about the Hercules project is that the grades the copper grades were fairly exceptional, for a porphyry, which are typically quite low grade. The discovery hole that we announced last October was close to 200 meters, running almost 1% copper, and that's quite significant, and got a lot of attention from a lot of big groups. And as a junior company, we're always needing to finance our exploration, because exploration doesn't make money. You don't make money until you're in production, and so to do exploration, to do drilling, we go to the market and we look to raise money, and we look to raise money through financings. And ultimately, when you announce a hole like we announced last year, you get the attention of some pretty big companies, and there was several major mining companies that all reached out and all expressed an interest in potentially investing into Hercules, and of course Barrick was one of those groups. And so it was obviously a really nice situation for Hercules and for myself, because ultimately I had the choice to make between several major companies that were all offering money and investment on relatively similar terms. So it came down to picking who I thought would be the best company and to partner with ultimately. And I did a lot of homework, and I was able to call a lot of colleagues that I have in the industry who've worked with Barrick and worked with different groups, and everyone, the feedback I got was Barrick would likely be the best partner, and so that was the choice we made, and that was close to a year ago today, and we've had a very successful partnership. Barrick has been an amazing group to work with. And so, very happy that they've also decided to come here and present their own town hall meeting, so they can share a bit about, this isn't obviously so much about what we're doing at Hercules, I think, but probably more about, what's going on, and some of the other exploration elsewhere in this new copper belt. So, very happy that Barrick's decided to come down and do that today, and I think both our companies want to be as connected with the community as possible, and this is really just a great opportunity. So With that said, I'd like to turn this over to Kevin Creel, the VP North American Discoveries for Barrick Gold.
All right, thanks, Chris, and thanks for the vote of confidence on partnering up with us. We would not be here if it wasn't for Chris and the Hercules team's success there at the Discovery this last year. And so organizing this town hall, we're building on some of those relationships that Chris and Ryan have established, and want to thank them for helping us organize this event, and obviously appreciate everybody coming out tonight. I was at the last town hall, and I heard loud and clear from a number of participants that were there in the Q&A session, what are the other groups doing? Where are they? Why aren't they engaging with us? So this is part of trying to close that gap. So we're here. It's a town hall event. I've got a few slides that I'll walk through, but really I'm looking forward to the question and answer session. And to be honest with you, because it is a town hall, I'm happy to stop, pause, and address questions if they come up while we're going through this. Before we go into the slides, though, I'll do a bit more introductions, starting with myself, and try to make it a little more personal. Other than just, I work for Barrick. I've worked for Barrick for 20 years. I've worked for other big mining companies. My passion is exploration and discovery, so that's from a geologist standpoint, which I'm a geologist through and through. My dad was a geologist as well. These discoveries that happen, these are big value-creating events. So when I say value-creating events, somebody goes out and discovers something new. In this case, a copper deposit. These can turn into jobs. They can turn into tax revenue. They can turn into a lot of wealth creation for those people that are participating in it. So that's my dream, is try to make a difference in the community that I live in or that I work in by generating wealth through ultimately mining these resources that come out of discoveries. So that's kind of the background and what drives me and drives my passion. A little bit more background. I'm a father of 3. My daughters are out of the house. One graduated from college. The other one's still going to college at Oregon State University. Have a son at home, and my wife is a runner. And so my connection with Cambridge happened before the Discovery was announced. So just a little bit of a small world connection here. The Weiser River Trail. I had no idea that there was such a nice resource in the area. And when we read about this discovery up in Idaho, I was like, Leslie, there's a discovery up in Idaho. We're going to go up and look at it. And she said, oh, where is it? I said, it's in western Idaho. It's north of Weiser. And she said, oh, yeah, remember I told you I signed up for a run that goes down the Weiser River Trail until we got online and looked at it and went right through Cambridge. So I came and joined her, not to run the run because I'm not a runner, and there's no way I would be able to survive that run. But I came and explored the Weiser River Trail on my bike, and what a beautiful resource. So anyway, that's a little bit of a personal connection with Cambridge, and beyond that, you'll probably pick up some other clues of what drives me and who I am as we go through the presentation, but happy to catch up on any other details. So I'm going to turn it over to Gerry here, and we'll just go quickly introduce the Barrick team that's working in there.
Hi, my name is Gerry Griesel. I'm heading up the field portion of Barrick's Greenfield Exploration across the belt here in the mountains in your backyard. I've been with Barrick since 2012. 10 years of that I spent living in Elko with my family, and actually my wife, she went back to school after the kids got into school, and she got into ultrasound and got a job up at St. Luke's, and so I've actually been living in Ada County. We got a place in Meridian, so I live in Meridian with my 2 kids. They're 10 and 13. We're avid outdoor people. We love rafting and mountain biking and snowboarding and hiking and camping. So we love coming up into the Snake River and the Salmon River and exploring all out in the woods. And it's pretty fortuitous and lucky when you work on greenfield exploration projects like this. It's not often you get a project you can drive to in 2 hours and be able to raise home if mom says the kids need help with something. So I'm really blessed to be able to work on this project, and really like this little town, this little community, and just pretty fascinated by the rocks and the mountains out here. And I'll turn it over to Glenn Asch. This is my boss.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us. My name's Glenn Asch. I'm Barrick's manager of U.S. generative exploration work. I report to Kevin. We conduct exploration looking for new copper and gold opportunities throughout the western U.S. I've been with Barrick now for 21 years. Been a fantastic company to work for, both professionally and interaction with communities. And, much like Kevin, the passion's in the discovery, and this discovery that Chris made with the Hercules team is, always exciting early on in these, in the cycle of exploration leading into mining over time. And, this is my first time up in this general region, beautiful area to work. I went to school in University of Nevada, Reno. Spent a good portion of my career working in Nevada, as well as some overseas work. And it's great to be a geologist because you get to be outdoors, look at a lot of rocks, look at lots of interesting geologic features. So anyway, thanks for having us. I'll pass it over to Carli.
Hi everyone, I'm Carli. I'm a geologist. I work under Glenn. I'm from a small town in Illinois, and during college I did some internships with Barrick where I started learning about ore deposits, and then that really started driving my passion for metals and resources of the earth. And then after college I graduated. I've been working for Barrick for about 2 years now. And yeah, I've been pretty closely involved with the Hercules project this summer, and it's been a great opportunity to learn about the area, learn about the geology of the area, and learn about these unique deposits that Chris was describing. Yeah, just overall really have enjoyed spending time in Cambridge and the little community. I mean, the quilt store, just everything about this town has been just very delightful. So I just thank everyone for being quite friendly and kind everywhere we've been in town.
So yeah, my name is Joe Ghiorso. I'm also a geologist with the Barrick generative team. So yeah, I've been working for Barrick for about 6 years now, both as a contractor and as a full-time employee, and mostly in Nevada. But yeah, really enjoyed it up here this summer as well. See a lot of familiar faces out here, and so yeah, it's been really nice to get to know a lot of you guys, and thank you for your hospitality.
Very good. So we'll jump into the slide deck here, and hopefully everybody can read that. I'm not going to read it, so I'm going to just introduce the company a bit more. So Barrick it's a big mining company. Some of you may have heard of it in the past. We're a neighbor in our operations in that we have very big gold mining operations in Nevada. Our gold mines in Nevada produced about 3 million ounces of gold last year. And that comes from the hard work of over 7,000 people working in those mines directly for Barrick and our partner, as well as all the other people that service the mines through drilling activities, through all the trucking and transport, and all the other services that support that. So that's probably another 7,000 to 10,000 people. So there's a lot of people supporting those big gold mines in Nevada. And the big operations are called out in that blue box. They're the Carlin mines, of which there's a lot of mines, both open pit and underground. The Cortez District, which I spent a lot of my career in and participated in some of the discoveries there. And then Turquoise Ridge, which is mostly an underground operation. Elsewhere in the region, we do have projects up into Alaska, and we have one other mine in Canada called Himlo. It's a small mine, but still producing gold after 40 or more years of mine life. And then we have a small operation across the border in Montana called Golden Sunlight. It used to be a mine. Now it's a facility that's heading towards reclamation, but it's still producing gold by reprocessing the tailings. So that's kind of our footprint in the region. I think as we've entered into Idaho, and are getting our feet wet after we've staked the claims, which I'll go to in a little bit more detail. What we've seen is that Idaho is a great place to work. It's been very accessible, and the geology is phenomenal. So we're really excited to be here in Idaho, and we're going to continue to persist looking for the next big discovery. So the how we operate, this is a number of different facets of what we try to honor when we come in as a potential new partner in communities and in the world that we operate in, which is kind of the early stage of the mining business. But first and foremost, I'll just highlight that we really do try to maintain that honest, transparent communication, and this is a first step that we are starting with in building that relationship. So the other ones, we do empower local communities. So there's going to be some questions that were provided to me by Ryan, but hopefully some other questions come up later in the discussion about that. The prioritizing local hiring and buying, that's just good business, right? Because that's an incentive to keep us around. We plan for closure at all stages. So mining is, by definition, going to create quite a big footprint, and so of disturbance. And so we need to think about how we're going to manage that all the way through the closure of the mining operation. And so and it does take a lot of planning to make sure that that's done well. We reduce our environmental impacts. Again, mining does create environmental impacts. The ability to manage those impacts is oftentimes going into the regulatory process of granting the permission to go out and mine. And so we go through a lot of effort to mitigate those problems before they ever become a problem. And that's heavily regulated. I think I was in a session yesterday with our government affairs person, and she highlighted that mining is the most regulated industry in the U.S. And there's a reason for that, because it's created messes in the past, and we do a lot of disturbance. So because of that, we have to set the bar high and then achieve those targets that we have when we're going in and making those impacts. We build and maintain genuine partnerships. I think that'll be the test of time. We'll have to prove that. We can't just say that we do that, but we'll have to prove that. We put safety first. That's just the right thing to do. So I think everybody honestly puts safety first. We do the same thing, and in our heavy industry, that's not a trivial matter. All the way from the drilling stage into the heavy equipment that goes into mining. There are a lot of dangers that every day we don't encounter, but we do a lot to manage those risks that are associated with that heavy industry. Okay. And then, zeroing in on partnerships, I'm not going to talk about the first point, but sharing the benefits. The reality is that we can't come in and if there's success, we can't take it all for ourselves, because that just doesn't work. And so, the benefits for the community would be jobs, tax revenue, and development of projects that you see as important for your community. So those are the kinds of partnerships that we build. And then, I'm looking forward to the last one, which is the engaging and listening to the stakeholders. So that's how we modify our paths so that we're aligned with the communities that we work in. So that's engaging and listening to you. Okay, so I'm going to switch gears a little bit from Barrick and our philosophy over to exploration and how we do our business. And this goes through a bit of a timeline. So, I think everybody up here introduced themselves as geologists. Some of the group introduced themselves as generative geologists. So the generative activity is that first step towards going out and looking for a new deposit. And we're generating ideas, we're generating projects, we're generating targets. And it's quite a time-consuming process, because you're out there in the field collecting samples, And those samples are giving you clues, and each one of those clues you have to follow and go into more detail. And so that first level is what we're on. We're in that true generative space where we're just learning about the ground that we've staked. So we've staked a large swath of claims that covers an area west of Council all the way to northwest of Weiser. And it's that staking was done as a result of that discovery that Chris highlighted. And we don't have all those claims through that area. When there's a discovery, there's other companies that go in and stake claims too. And so we have competitors that are adjacent to us and around us. Some of them might be in the room, I'm not sure. But when we go out and stake those claims, there's a process for staking claims. And we basically go out and we hire crews to go out and basically put wooden posts with information about each claim in the ground to establish a right to go down that path of exploration and potentially mining. And it's a process that's been formalized in law for a long time in the U.S. and it works quite well for giving us a pathway to ownership, and that pathway to ownership gives us certainty on our investment. So at this stage, we're investing a few $1 million. When we get to the stage of potentially building a mine, we're investing hundreds of millions of dollars. And so having that pathway to ownership is really valuable. And to me, it's what makes America great. Because if we didn't have that pathway, we wouldn't be here. We would be exploring somewhere else that had that opportunity to go down the path of making a big investment and then getting the return back from that investment. So we're in that generative stage. We've staked the claims. Now we're out in this next wave. We'll be identifying targets, and those are narrowing down the search space, and ultimately drilling. So the drilling is our truth machine. That's what we call it. So once we have an idea, a concept, and we think it's viable geologically, we bring a drill in and we drill the hole to test that concept. And if it's successful, a good example is the Hercules discovery. And then that clears a hurdle and it moves towards the next level, which is more drilling and building confidence in what was discovered. So the timeline over on the right side is showing where we anticipate we may be over the next 5+ years. So at this stage, it's boots on the ground, a few geologists out in the field, and quite a low impact. In a couple of years, maybe some drilling. And that drilling will go through a process of approvals, and by that point, we'll be doing more engagement through that step to kind of keep you posted on where we are in the process. Out and do the sampling and the geological work. We're literally out there like the old-time prospectors, I think, fair to say, Gerry, with rock hammers and notebooks, and we're describing the samples that we're taking and using our schooling to try to take that information we get from those samples and make good decisions. So that's the process of exploration, and ultimately we combine all that together to try to make good decisions. And I didn't mention, maybe I think I had in my notes, but I hate to admit it, but geologists oftentimes fail. We're used to failure. So we come up with great ideas and we go out and test these ideas, and I'd say 99 out of 100 of these good ideas turn out to be wrong, right? And it's just a fact of life. We get used to it. It's not always easy to accept that we're going to be wrong, but that is a fact of life doing the exploration work. But when we're right that one time, that's where we make a difference, and that's where we are driven to go. All right, so in our work in Idaho, this work for us started with the investment in Hercules, and we were very happy to be able to invest and have an interest as a shareholder. We're a shareholder in Hercules, and then Chris asked us to contribute to the technical program, so we've contributed some expertise and some support through geology. And geologists have contributed to the program this year. So we've had a couple geologists embedded in the program. So Carli was one of the geologists. Our other geologist, you may have met around town, he had an accent, so he was from Chile. He was a porphyry expert. His name was Jorge Sanuesa. He came up for a 6-month assignment here in Idaho. Loved it, I think.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely loved it. And from our standpoint, you know, that's a resource we have as a big global company to bring in some other eyes that have that experience. And he came in and brought some expertise that, frankly, we didn't have. We don't work in copper porphyries very often in Nevada. So anyway, we joined that effort and made that investment, but then we also started staking claims. And so on one hand, we're partnered up with Chris and the Hercules team. On the other, we're competing. So we are direct competition with these guys. And it's just a fact of life. You know, we have some resources, and we're going to exercise our resources to take advantage of the news and go out there and try to compete, right? And so that's when we went out and started staking claims. Others were doing the same thing, and in the end, we staked about 5,000 claims, which is a lot of claims. I think at the last town hall, somebody mentioned in the Q&A session that there were more than 6,000 claims staked in, I don't know if it was Payette County or Washington County. Yeah, it was Washington County. But anyway, there's been a lot of claims staked. You know, it's a pretty unique time. That doesn't happen very often. We call them staking wars, or you know, I think that would be fair to say. And they happen, you know, in North America. You know, since I've been in the business 30 years, I know of two big staking rushes. One was when diamonds were discovered up in northern Canada in the 90s, and this one. So, you know, the fact that happened here, it's unique. It's maybe an opportunity. It's maybe a little bit concerning, right? Creates some anxiety. So that's what we're here trying to inform, so that if there's concerns or questions, let's get them out on the table and so that we can address them. But we go out there, we're not trying to make a big impact at that point, but it is time-sensitive work. And so we hired staking crews from all over the western U.S., including Idaho, to go out and do this claim staking. We used helicopters, we used side-by-sides and a lot of boot leather to go out and stake these claims, and we did it in the winter, right? And so this is hard work, and sometimes we stopped doing it because it was not safe, right? You get snow up in that high country, and there was avalanche dangers. Just couldn't operate. A lot of coordination on the flights with fire. Anyway, there was a lot of factors going in there, and it took us months to do that staking, but that was a big push, and ultimately, we've kind of wrapped that staking activity up for now, and that's why we're here. Because now that we've got our ground secured and we can focus on something else, we wanted to come and present ourselves and start telling the story. What else is up here? So, you know, I've highlighted how many people are working on the project. There's not very many people working in the project area right now. 1 to 4 geos out in the field at any given time, doing that generative work, doing that sampling and reconnaissance mapping, and then Carli and Jorge over there joined with the Hercules team. So, you know, what are we going to do moving forward? We're going to do this. We're going to do some engagement, whether it's town hall or one-on-one. Doesn't matter to us. We're happy to engage however it comes, or however you want to engage. The sampling and mapping, we're kind of winding down for the season. I didn't highlight, but I made a mistake when we scheduled this town hall. I didn't realize it was first day of deer season. So apologies for all those deer hunters out there. But anyway, I wouldn't have scheduled it on the first day if I knew, but I thought it would have been on the weekend. But anyway, I'm a hunter, and I'm sensitive to that. Alex, I'm glad you're here. Anyway, you know, moving on to the sampling and work next year, I want to flag that we'll be out in the field, a few geos sampling and mapping, but we're also planning an airborne survey. So the airborne work that you saw this year, it probably wasn't noticeable or different than what you see helicopter use for like wildlife surveys or fire reconnaissance or things like this. The survey that we're planning next year is an airborne geophysical survey. It'll be different. So it's a helicopter that's flying with some tooling underneath it. And so that tooling allows us to collect information about the Earth. And it's kind of like a giant metal detector. And we're looking for metals. And so that's what we're going to use to help us search. And in Idaho, I don't know how many people are geologists, probably not many, but everybody in Idaho should know what a basalt is, because there's so much basalt in Idaho. So that basalt covers a lot of the rocks that we are looking to understand. And that helicopter with this metal detector allows us to look through those basalts. And so we want to do some surveying with this helicopter to look down through those basalts and help us with that targeting, because those basalts really are difficult for geologists. We can hammer them all day long and they aren't going to tell us anything. So anyway, that's something we're going to be planning this next summer. It's a summertime activity. We will not plan it during hunting season, I guarantee that. That would create some enemies, plus everybody's arms, so we'll avoid that. All right, so that's the highlights of what I had to present. A photo of a few of us that are up there. There's contact information here. If you want to trade any more detailed contact information, come up and ask us for our cell numbers. We're happy to give that out. I don't know if there was a mailer for this. I think there was, but if there's not, and please, if you haven't signed in, sign in. We'll get you on the mailer so that you can be contacted the next time we have one of these types of events. And then if you want to capture the general phone line, which it will be very responsive on this. We have a team of people who do community relations work and will funnel the questions or the call directly to one of us. There's some contact information if you want to take a photo. So that's really the end of the formal presentation. I'm going to pause and ask for any questions. Yes.
So you have 5,000 claims that you filed. How much land does each claim take?
Sure. The question was how much land area is covered by a claim, and it's about 20 acres, as I recall. It's about 600 feet wide and 1,500 feet long.
So just a follow-up question to
Yeah.
that, with a lot of ranchers and farmers around here who have grazing rights and stuff, what happens if these claims start to be worked or whatever? What has precedent? Is it grazing rights or the mining rights, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Repeat the question.
Okay, yeah. The question was when there's other rights associated with that land, like grazing rights, what's the priority? And that at the early stages, like when we're out just mapping and sampling, it's not a concern. When we go into disturbance activities, it becomes a concern, and so that's oftentimes an engagement with the other rights holders. And making sure that we navigate that through conversations and negotiations if necessary. But usually it's conversations about how can we minimize the impact, avoid the impact if possible, and then ultimately the mining rights are quite strong rights, and so there are options to continue down the path of exploration and disturbance activities as results warrant. So it's usually a conversation that determines that. Thanks. Good question. Yes, sir.
How will the ore be taken out? Where will it go? Will it be processed?
Okay.
Is it going to go down our local roads? Or?
Yep, good question. So the question is, how will the ore be taken out? Where will it go? How's it managed after it's mined? How's it processed? And I think Chris started addressing this last town hall. I'll navigate it as best I can. So, in a mining complex, and I'm going to just try to tailor it to a copper mine because that's what we're looking for here. Once the ore has been brought to the processing facility, it's usually crushed and ground into a bit of a powder. And then they typically would float a concentrate, and that concentrate is more of the metal that you're looking for. So it's copper sulfides mostly, and that concentrate is then trucked to a smelter or trucked to a location where it can be shipped to a smelter. So that process of the processing of the ore is intended to get a lot of volume of rock reduced down to just the minerals of interest, which is a big deal, because then it's easier to transport. And then that trucking of that ore, that concentrate, would typically go to a railhead, and then from the railhead it would go off to a smelter. Sometimes in Canada, could go to China. There's not very many smelters in the U.S.
So where is it going to be processed here?
It would be in a grinding circuit with a flotation cell, and that would be built within a reasonable distance from a mine when it's found and developed. So reasonable would be within miles of where the deposit would be.
So are you going to mine on Hip Mountain?
The stage that we're at, we don't have a mine yet, so it's really hard to say. You know, I don't want to jump into Chris's turf, to be honest with you. And for us, it's so early that, to be honest, I don't see a mine yet. So, the belt of rocks that we've claimed are along this old Ferry terrain, which is created terrain in the western U.S. And it covers an area from, say, Rock Creek all the way up to is it Peck Mountain? Yeah. So that's kind of the area we're looking for a mine, but a long ways from getting there.
But at your mine, once you process the ore, are you processing it at the mine site? Because a lot of that's going to be real steep.
The question is where would we process the ore, like up in these mountains? Typically, a processing facility would be in a place that is reasonably accessible and flatter, so that you can construct, and then you do produce a lot of waste from that crushing and grinding, and so that goes into a tailings facility. And so those are not going to be built in the high country; they'll be built in a flatter lowland area. And so
that would be like on Forest Service ground or BLM.
Yeah, it'd be wherever made logical sense, and that we could actually secure the rights. So maybe we'd have to buy some land. Maybe we'd have to have additional claims to support that kind of facility.
So, like the road, do you improve the roads, or what do you do there?
Yeah, there's a lot of road work with the business. So, in the event of a mine being developed, typically that goes through a very lengthy process of permitting. And that permitting develops. It's like building a house, or it's actually more like building a town. And we have to lay out the plans, share those with the stakeholders, get the feedback, and the stakeholders includes the community. Get the feedback on those plans, adjust them as appropriate, try to mitigate the impacts, and then once the plan has been through all the stakeholders, then it's finalized, and we are given an approval for that construction, and we're given a permit. It's called a plan of operation approval.
So theoretically, how many years down the road?
A long time. Theoretically, I'll just talk in real numbers. To permit a mine in the U.S. takes somewhere between 20 and 30 years on average. So it's quite a lengthy process, because it's quite a big potential impact, and you have to mitigate as many of those impacts as possible so that it fits the needs and benefits the stakeholders as best as possible.
Yeah, and if it's
speak to Hercules' end of that a little bit, and if we're looking at something that's 10 years out, and we're doing, let's say, 2 town halls a year, as we know, as we, hopefully we do find something that's economic and can be mined, and then, the next step from there is we start to do studies. And so the first study you'll do is, it's usually called a scoping study, sort of very, basic level study. And if things are looking good, if the numbers are looking good, you then kind of go up to what's called a pre-feasibility study, which is a lot more involved, a lot more inputs, and then ultimately a feasibility study. And then this is a multi-year process, And in those studies, that's where you start to progressively lay out, okay, these numbers are working. Now, where could we maybe put our mill? So the mill is where you, what Kevin described is where you concentrate the ore, which is maybe, 0.7% copper, let's just say, into 30% copper, which can then be transported to a smelter somewhere. Where's that mill going to go? Where it makes the most sense. And so all that kind of information, we'll just be able to kind of keep communicating and updating you guys as it comes in. But hopefully for now, it gives you kind of some basic idea of what we might expect should we find something that's economic.
So how thick is the typical overburden of the basalt?
How thick is the typical overburden of the basalt? Well, it's very variable. So with the Hercules project, the reason there was so much drilling there in the 60s and the 80s is because there's no basalt at surface. So it's been completely eroded away. And so, the rocks beneath are exposed. And so even the old timers were, founded back in the 1800s and they had their small scale mining happening back then. In 2024, exploration is different. We have obviously a lot more technology now. And as Kevin described, there's tools you can dangle from a helicopter, big metal detectors. This is equipment that did not exist, 20 years ago. And so now you can start to look down, I don't know, I think there's stuff that can probably look down almost close to a mile now, right? Some of these big metal detectors. And the basalt is, sometimes it's miles thick, and so it all has to do with, where the faults are. Sometimes, if a block is pushed up by a fault, it gets eroded down. But if a block goes downwards, the basalt could be several miles thick. So it's all over the place, really.
So I got a question for Chris. While he's up there. Last time we had the meeting, we were talking about the drilling that you guys had done up there, and you had 1,000 feet overburden. Is that what? And you guys had went down another 2,000 feet and had to come out of the deposit again. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the question basically relates to how much. For one, how much cover there is on top of this copper deposit, that's not copper, not mineralized with copper. And then the other part of the question is, how deep have we found copper? So in other words, where's the top of the copper deposit and where's the bottom? And it's, again, variable. So, the top is anywhere from, I think the shallowest we've hit it is around 600 feet in one of our holes last year. And, the deepest is closer to, 1,500 feet, to the top of it. And, we've got a hole, from last year that it went down 3,200 feet, I believe, and was still in mineralization at that depth. So we don't know where the bottom is yet. And I think it's going to be a long time before we figure that out.
Last time you were telling us, well, it might be a pit mining and we just really don't know. And so, thinking about it, how do you have a pit mine and take 2,000 feet out of the center of it and try and follow a vein pit? With the tunnel.
Yeah, so the question is, last time we sort of talked a little bit about open pit versus underground mining, and which Hercules is more likely to be. And I'll just say, right now, I'd say the way things are looking, we try and look at this when we do our exploration. We want something that would work as an underground, because if you're dealing with that much cover, if you're dealing with that much overburden, that's a lot of overburden to strip away to have to dig a big open pit. And so we'd rather find something that would work as an underground operation. And that would also be obviously a lot less disturbance too. So I think it's better for everyone. And so there's a certain type of underground mining that's specific for these type of copper porphyry deposits, and it's called block caving. And so there's all different underground methods. There's methods that only go after, very selective. So they only go after very high-grade veins, maybe only, 15 feet wide. And there's block caving, which is meant for deposits that can be, thousands of feet in all directions, all dimensions. And so with block caving, it's a method where you come in underneath the ore body and you essentially build a network of tunnels underneath the ore body. You drill upwards into the ore body, you blast it, you initiate caving, and then you start hauling it out from underground. And so as you pull that material out from underground, the rest of the ore body will cave downwards, and it'll just continue to cave in on itself, and you can just draw it out from there. And so it's very expensive to get started. There's a lot of pre-production development that has to go into something like that. But once it's running, once it's operating, the operating expenses are relatively low, and so they'll work for what's called, a bulk tonnage, low-grade deposit like a porphyry. They don't need to be high-grade veins necessarily. The subsidence happening. It's not going to be like a big open pit, but yes, there will be some subsidence always at surface, depending on the scale of the operation.
And you also said last time that you guys were the exploration and you sold the mineral rights, and that's how you made your money. So you weren't actually mining it, you were saying that somebody else was going to mine it?
Yeah, so the question relates to Hercules' business model, essentially. So we do the exploration, we do the drilling, and there's sort of two scenarios. There's two routes that we can go. If we find a deposit that's economic, we can sell that to a mining company, or we can grow as a company and look to mine the deposit ourselves, gain the expertise, and hire the engineers and the mining contractors and go it ourselves. And yeah, at this stage, obviously, we're still in the exploration stage, and it's going to be many, many years before we know what we're going to do for sure. But yeah, it is very realistic to position ourselves for takeover by a larger mining company like Barrick, who has that expertise to mine large copper deposits.
So you actually can't speak to how it would be done because you wouldn't own it at that point?
No, and the question is, I can't speak to how it would be done because I don't own it, and no, I can't speak to how the mining would be done. And the reality is, it just is too early at this stage to speak to how any mining would be done, and I only put it out there to try and attempt to give some information as to like what we might expect in the future. But the reality is, until we drill off a deposit that's economic and we know what it looks like, it's very difficult to speculate on what the scenario might be.
Well, we haven't found the bottom of it, have you found the edges of it?
We have not found the edges of it. We haven't found the bottom of it. We haven't found the edges of it. So, again, sort of speaks to the early days of the exploration.
So we're kind of changing this from a Barrick to Hercules at the moment.
That's all right.
But are you finding any other interesting minerals in the area yet?
Yeah, so the question is, are we finding any other interesting minerals in the area yet? So, other than what we've announced, no. So there's always been the silver, lead, zinc. That's been well known about in the district since 100 years. And that's how things started at Hercules. So that's always there. And we do, as we're, we no longer specifically target our drill holes for silver, lead, zinc, which is completely separate from the copper. All of our drill holes are targeting the copper. And if we hit some silver on the way down, that's great. And we are, starting to see silver, lead, zinc that we didn't know was there because we're drilling areas that we wouldn't have drilled normally looking for the silver, lead, zinc. But I wouldn't say there's anything other than the silver, lead, zinc and the copper.
Where are you currently drilling? Is that up Camp Creek?
We are currently drilling up Camp Creek, yep.
So that's the only place you drill?
In that general area within, call it 1 mile radius, yep. That's the only area we've drilled.
What about private landowners if they don't own the mineral rights?
So the question is, what about private landowners that don't own their mineral rights? So in the U.S., according to the mining law of 1872, now I guess let me sort of explain a little bit about how it works. So up until 1916, anything that was homesteaded, the government, federal government, gave away the minerals, so you would own your mineral rights. Anything after 1916, the government stopped giving away the mineral rights, and so those parcels we call split estate. So the minerals are owned by the federal government, and they can be staked by anyone. Hercules has not, gone after any, private like ranchers or anything like that don't own their minerals, and staked minerals where a rancher might own the land. We haven't done anything like that. So, but I have heard that there are a few small outfits around that have stakes and claims like that out there, but I can't speak to much about that other than that.
Yeah, I can just say there's a process when those mineral rights are split from the surface rights, and it's a notice of intent to go out and stake that land. So there's a notification process to the landowner to let them know that there's going to be activity, and then there's a period after that notice is presented where obviously there can be some conversations, and then the party, which we did go and stake some of those split estates, can go in and stake that land. It's a good question.
So if you get minerals on somebody else, on one of those split estates,
Yep.
what happens to the guy that owns it then? You just shut him off, or?
That would be bad business for, sorry. The question is in the event that there's success finding something on that split estate, would the surface owner be out of luck? And typically there would be a negotiation in acquisition of all the rights. And if the person doesn't want to sell, then it'll go down a path that's dependent on the law, and I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to go into that. I'm not going to navigate that conversation, but mineral rights are, as Chris said, pretty strong rights, and so it has to do with the value of those minerals coming out of the ground, as far as generating wealth for the communities, for the people working there, but also for the tax base and revenue, and so
Loosely, it would be.
loosely, yeah, the mineral rights would trump the surface rights. But typically, it's not a strong arm type of negotiation. Good question. Are there any other questions? Ryan gave me a long list of questions. I don't know if I'm going to go into them, but there, maybe I'll take a quick gander while everybody's kind of thinking of their last question. It sounds like we're getting towards the end. Are there any questions about the community engagement or any expectations from the community that would be worth sharing in this forum? I heard a really strong expectation last time, which is what are the other companies doing? That's why we're here. So happy to hear any other expectations from us. Yes.
It's not an expectation, but my question is, you mentioned it a couple times in your presentation about the pathway to ownership.
Yep.
Explain that.
Yeah.
What do you mean by ownership?
Well, it's having that right to mine. That's the ownership that I'm talking about. It's not actually owning the ground, because it's federal ground, right? It's owned by the people. But that pathway to have the right to mine is probably a better way to state it. So the question was, what do you mean by the ownership? And the ownership is the ownership of the rights to go out and ultimately mine the minerals that we discover. That's probably a good clarification. Does that help? Okay, thank you. Yes, yes, sir.
Connected to that, and listening to another presentation from another outfit, they said it used to be you could do what they call, I think, proving up on the mine and land, and then it did become your but that, they said that's no longer the case. Do you have any information on that?
Correct. I don't know exactly the timeline, but the process of the question was around patenting claims, which allowed you to go out and stake a claim. That was an unpatented claim, and then if you were successful and proved up the minerals in that claim, you could actually file for a patent, and that patent would be granted, and then you'd have rights to the surface and the minerals, just like true private land, and you'd own it. That process of patenting claims was stopped. There was a moratorium on patenting mining claims. I think that came in the 90s, in part because it wasn't in the best interest of the owners, including the government. And also people were abusing it. So that process is not an option anymore. But many of you probably know or have seen patented mining claims. You know, oftentimes, like we explore around the western U.S., oftentimes they have a cabin built on them now because all the rights are private. So you can go and build a house and have a nice place out in the woods.
They're the weird shaped land packages when you look on Onyx when you're out hunting and in the bush. If you have Onyx, you know, to see where the land rights are when you're hunting, the patented ones are usually the weird diagonal shaped ones that go all over the place. Those are typically patents.
And they're widespread in the western U.S. because there was a lot of mining activity in the western U.S. and a lot of patents granted. Yes,
So
sir.
these claims that are out there now, how long are they good for?
The good question. The question is how long are these claims good for that we've just staked?
Right.
And they're good as long as we pay the cost of holding them. So we have to pay an annual cost for each claim, and that cost, it's $200 per claim per year, and I think it's just recently gone up
this year.
That's the new price. So it went up quite significantly recently, and so you know that $200 goes to the government to hold that land.
So is the price the same on state lands, federal lands?
No, there's different rules for different classifications of land. So the question is it the same for state versus federal? I'm not a lawyer, but I'll navigate a little bit of this. But federal is pretty straightforward. You stake a claim, it's at 20 acres, you pay a per acre cost annually. For the state lands, there's a Idaho Department of Lands that manages your state lands, and in that management of those lands, you can apply for leasing those lands. This is one option. You can apply to lease those lands, and then the state, if they see that as a beneficial use of those state lands, and they think it's the best value for that land use, then they'll put it out for auction. And in that auctioning process, they'll grant it to the highest bidder based on terms that the state has set. And so it's a lease arrangement. And probably, I don't know the details of it, but there's a cash upfront payment to win the lease, and then there's going to be lease payments for that, and there's probably a duration of that lease, and then probably options to renew the lease. So.
Are these all recorded by GPS? I see a lot of them mistakes are falling over.
Yes, they are, and the stakes do fall over. The fires burn them and other things, but the locations very accurately located by GPS and recorded with the county assessor. And then if those stakes disappear, like in a fire, the claim is still valid.
I've been learning this system for the last 3 years. It's the mining law of 1872, and it hasn't really changed since 1872. So basically, you sort of lay out on a computer where you want each claim to go, and you make a map on your computer, and then you hire a contractor who specializes in claim staking, and he goes and has his guys put actual physical posts. So there'll be 4 posts for every claim, and he'll GPS the final locations of each of those 4 posts, and then the first thing you do is you go down to you record it at the county, at the courthouse, the recorders, and you pay a small fee there, and then you got to basically record them at the BLM, and that's where you pay the $200 for every claim. And so the BLM, what you have to do is you submit what's called your location notice, and on the location notice is a description of where the first corner is and where each other corner is. It's a legal description, and then you also have to submit a map. So for instance, like, we want to go do some staking, and we want to, first you have to map out every other competitor that's in the area, what their claims look like. And so quite often what we'll do is we'll just go to the BLM and we'll ask for the map, right? And that's kind of the easiest way to do it. But there's a lot of other ways, GPS and descriptions and things like that, but it's quite confusing and convoluted.
We're thankful for the GPS. Yeah. GPS has made life a bit easier. Yes, sir.
Does any of this claim money come back to the county?
That's a question I don't have the answer for. Chris?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you.
I don't know.
The county costs are relatively low.
Okay.
It's like $10 a claim.
So there is some, the answer Glenn provided is, the question was, does any of this money come back to the county? There are some county fees associated with the claim, this assessment cost.
Yeah.
Relatively low, say $10 per claim, is that what you said?
Yeah, it's like $10 goes to the county and $200 goes to the BLM. Oh, right?
A little different. $10 goes to the county, and that includes an annual cost as well as an initial filing cost. With the federal government, the initial claim staking filing fee, I believe, is up to $285 a claim. So if you go stake a claim, you have to pay, and you'll have to excuse me, I can't remember, I think it's $285 for federal and the county, like $275 for. That's your initial fee that you pay to the government, both the county and the federal government. And then to hold that claim that you've already filed on, it's $200 a year to keep it. If you don't make that $200 payment, the claim becomes null and void. And so if you want to realize, I mean, this has happened in our business where people forget to file on their claims. Right? They stake the claim, they pay their fee. 2 years later, they forget to file on the claim becomes null and void. And either someone else gets that claim by staking it and filing it, or the person that had that claim actually has to re-stake and refile that claim. So.
Those are unhappy events.
Yeah. And if you don't mind, I'd like to just say something. A lot of the discussion here tonight has been around good questions around future impacts. I just kind of would like to highlight that on the Barrick claims that we have staked, that Kevin pointed to, we've got approximately 5,000 claims in the belt right now. We're at this super early stage of exploration, and as Kevin said, more often than not you fail. The hardest part of our business is making a discovery. Chris and his team have been very fortunate in that they put a drill hole into the right place with positive results, and they've been building on that, and they're still at a relatively early stage of understanding the geology. On the Barrick ground, we basically have had Gerry and Joe and 2 other geologists in and out, just walking the ground, mapping, sampling, and we're trying to, this winter we'll interpret our results, assess what we have. We'll go out and we'll do another round of more in-depth geologic investigation. It's just boots on the ground, a geologist with a hand lens and a rock hammer. And then it's, we have to, if we decide that there are targets that are worthy of drilling, as Kevin again highlighted, we have to go through a fair amount of regulatory process in order to drill. It requires cultural and biological surveys and bonding with the federal government. It's quite a process. And we're hoping that we can make a discovery, because that's what we're in the business for. But as of right now, we're at a super early stage of exploration, and if we can win our search space down to a couple, I don't know, a certain area of a few miles, plus or minus, out of like a 70-kilometer long belt, we'll feel like we have been successful.
So Kevin's got this slide up on some of the work you guys did, but maybe you could touch on like what the work was this summer, like mapping, soil sampling, and I know like some people were curious about like when might Barrick be drilling? Is this like next year? Is this 3 years from now? Or I mean, you don't know, but yeah, like a little bit about kind of the process, like that you guys are in, because it's such an early stage, the generative exploration, what that looks like.
Sure. If people are interested, the first thing we did, after Chris and his team made the discovery, and we're like, what the hell's that up in Idaho? What's the geology up there? And so we had people, Gerry and Joe, did a lot of just geologic investigation utilizing historic work that was done through universities or through the U.S. Geologic Survey or the Idaho State Survey. There's been a fair amount of geologic work done out in this belt in the past. And so Gerry and Joe dug in, pulled as much geologic information out as they can. We have fairly extensive files in our office down in Elko, Nevada. We hit those files to see what kind of historic work has been done, because again, from our perspective, we'd never really had this area in our radar before. So we built up our knowledge. We had geologists come out and just do some initial walking the ground and looking at the rocks and trying to determine what the alteration looks like, because as geologists there are certain things we look for. What are the rocks? Have they been altered to a certain level that's associated with certain types of deposits? What's the structural framework? And so the geologists went out and did some first pass initial reconnaissance traverses. And as we were continuing to stake our ground, we continued this level of just what we call boots on the ground work. Again, it's a geologist with a hand lens, a sample bag, and a rock hammer. Doing that, we continue to just have boots on the ground with the geologist in the field. We've just gotten some of that stream set data back. Joe's in the process of getting that interpreted. And, if we find anomalies that are interesting, we'll go back into those areas and do more boots on the ground. Because the region we've staked 70 kilometers of strike, 5,000 claims. Again, it's been mentioned, it's not a continuous block. There are competitors and other companies involved. And I suddenly just lost my train of thought of where I was going with that. It's a process. It's a long-term process just to define targets that look geologically of interest that you can test with a drill rig. Once we have targets defined, and to be honest, we don't have any targets defined because we've only been out in the field for 4 or 5 months now getting this data, and we have to assess this data this winter. When we get targets defined, to what Chris was saying, we have to go through the agencies to permit, and there's certain regulations that we have to abide by. Again, doing the proper surveys to get the permits, get the bonding in place. I think realistically, I would like to think potentially we could be drilling if we define targets around 2026 by the time the proper permitting avenues are followed through.
The copper deposits, is that generally in granite or what type of rock?
Excuse me?
The copper deposits, are they generally in granite or what type of rock?
They're associated with both granites, granitic intrusive rocks. They're called porphyry deposits because of the type of intrusive rock it is. Porphyry is a geologic term for these intrusions.
So a lot of this, where the overburden of the salt is so heavy, boots on the ground, you're not finding much.
Yep.
Nope, that's right. But we've been looking for windows through the basalt. Yeah. And then the other, like the porphyritic intrusions that intruded the wall rock, which is typically in this region like an old volcanic rock, and has impregnated the volcanic rock with mineralization as well as the intrusions. So I would say it's like intrusive related mineralization. There's intrusions that go into the host rock, and the host rock gets mineralized as well. Does that make sense? So.
And that's why we do the airborne survey as well.
Yeah, and because of all that basalt, these guys, as everyone here knows, it was pretty warm this summer. There was a lot of days in the plus 100 degrees, and our geologists are out there in that heat, sweating, going down into the canyons of basalt, which is dark rock, and it gets hot. Right, Gerry? Right, Joe? It's been a nice warm summer.
You got a question in the back here?
Yes.
I live across the street from one of the places there's, I think, taking the samples. And I just wondered what happens to all the samples if it turns out not to be beneficial, or where do they get disposed of? Is that making sense, the core samples?
The core samples, here, I'll take that.
that. So
Bins and bins of samples. I wondered what happens to those.
yeah, so the question is, of all the core samples that we take and collect, where do they go? What happens to all these samples? So we actually send all of these samples to a lab, and the lab will crush it down essentially into a powder and then dissolve it in acid, and then any metals that are in that rock will dissolve into the acid, and then they run it through a special machine that can basically tell you what the concentration is. And so sometimes the lab will dispose of the excess powder, it's called a pulp, themselves. And great question where they actually dispose of that, I'm not sure. Or sometimes the company will ask for the samples back, and they'll keep that powder on record in case in the future we can use it again for something else that might be useful.
And I'll just add on to that. It's a great question. Those cores are like a library for a geologist. We've invested a lot of money to get that out of the ground. And for a company like Barrick, where we're thinking out we'll be around for hundreds of years, we put those in warehouses. And it's like a library for us. And we get smarter, or we hope we get smarter with time, and we go back and reread the book to learn from it.
You're keeping the basalt cores too.
In our case, for our projects, we keep everything.
I've been in central Canada, Ontario. There were tons of these core samples laying around.
Sure, yeah, that's a smaller operator, probably not working to a best practice. In Canada, where I don't know if you were in fly camps or somewhere remote. Oftentimes in Canada, you fly into your projects. They fly the drill into the project, and it's really expensive to fly the core back out. And so in Canada, they typically build a little shed that lasts about 10 years, and then some time later, that core shed weathers away, and the core falls to the ground. You walk up to it as a geologist, you're like, oh, what a waste. I can't read the book anymore. So, but in these drive-up projects, we would take that core and put it in a warehouse and catalog it and pull it back out just like a library. It's a great question. Yes, sir.
So you talked about this sand that's up here, and then you've got different areas where you stake within that. Is there a place online or physically that a person can go and see the definition of that, a map of that, and holders are in that?
There's a claim density. Do you want to cover this? The online claims resources?
Yeah, there are websites out there. One of them is called Claims. You can go to www.claims. But they don't typically give you the detail of the claim outline. They'll give you like claim density per quarter section of land. So they might tell you that there's, a section of land you can use. If you stake the full section of land, there's typically about 36 claims in the section of land. And so, a section may show that there's 8 claims in there, but it won't show you the layout of those claims. The best way to get a layout of the claims is to actually go to the BLM office or the county recorder's office, and there people have to file their claim maps, and they have those recorded. Times have changed. In the old days, from my age, you'd go into the BLM or the county courthouse, and you'd have these things called MT plats, these big books that you would open, and it would show you the layout of the claims. A lot of those counties now are going digital, and you can go, and I don't know if the county here has those recorded digitally or just in what I would call an MT plat. So there's another website called www.mylandmatters,
That's a good one.
which is a good one, but again, it doesn't show you the layout of the claims. It just shows you how many claims are in an area. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So there are resources. The best way is just to go down to BLM or county courthouse and talk to someone and get what you're looking for.
So, geology has fascinated me, because it did my dad a lot, for different reasons I talked to him later about, but,
He's just curious about the geology and what we look at, and would we be interested in sharing that at all? I can talk rocks with you for the next 7 days straight, nonstop.
And he will.
After his day job.
Yeah. So I'm around town. We're renting a house here, and we're working out of the town. I go to the coffee shop. I go to the general store. We'll be here probably working on stuff next year. See me around at the gas station. Ask me a question. I'll talk till the cows come home. You see me out in the bush driving my truck out there looking at rocks, and you want to take a look at the rocks. I spent 2 hours with a guy from Weiser who was scouting elk up near Sturgill Peak just back in August, and he hiked about a mile of road with me, and he was a geology major in the 70s, worked for the USGS for 40 years doing stream stuff, and we scouted elk together and explained rocks, and we looked at minerals together. I let him use my hand lens. So.
We like what we do.
Most geologists you come across are very passionate about rocks, and if you're in the mining business looking for economic ore deposits, we get very excited when we see interesting alteration, complicated structural geology. That's what we live for.
Or hear about or make discoveries.
So for Chris, didn't you guys do some sort of similar aerial magnetism thing for your site?
Yeah, so the question is, did we do any of the geophysics on the Hercules project itself? And yes, we did. So we haven't done a helicopter-borne survey. We just surveyed a relatively small area, which is our property basically, and we used a drone. So we brought a geophysical contractor in, and it was magnetics. So there's all types of different surveys that you can fly, and in particular, we were interested in something that was going to help us map the geology, because it's really challenging to map, especially out here when you've got a lot of cover, you've got a lot of basalt, and so what the magnetics do, because different rocks, like a granite's going to have a different magnetic signature than a sandstone. So the magnetics will basically help you, highlight which different rock units are on the property, and will often show you where faults are and different important structures. So we did that on ours, but yeah, we haven't done like the big helicopters are usually, I guess for like larger areas, usually.
Okay, no more questions? I'm gonna ask Brian to help us out here. I think like Hercules set the bar last time I was here, there's a bit of a raffle. Hopefully everybody has their raffle ticket. And there's a few giveaways here. So I think there's a few gift cards from some of the local businesses here. I think I don't remember who all it was, maybe Ryan. I'll let you introduce what the prizes are.
First, did everybody get a raffle ticket? Tom? Tom?
Oh.
Anybody else?
Okay.
You want to MC this?
What?
You want to MC it?
I can. All right. First gift card is to the lumber yard. Oh, sorry. First gift card is to the lumber yard. I'll let Kevin, you pick, or one of you guys.
Carli.
Good night. There's 5 of them. We can't do this. $227,086. Hey, bingo. So you get $50 to the lumber yard. Oh, perfect. All right, $50 to the country coffee cabin.
$227,130.
You guys hear that? 227,130. Bingo. There we go. All right, we got $50 to Oh Honey.
$227,111.
227,111. Hey. We got another gift certificate to Gateway Pizza, and they were the ones that helped us with the pizza tonight.
I love Gateway Pizza.
He just said how much he loves Gateway Pizza. 227098. Bingo, there we go. All right, and then I was asking Jen at the lumberyard, I'm like, Jen, we need a big prize. And she says, this would be perfect. This is a grill, and you've also got a battery pack on it, and it's great for camping or whatever. So this was the big grand prize Jen helped me pick out, and she just left too. Who's up?
Chris.
Me? I get to do Barrett's grand finale?
You get to do the Barrick grand finale.
What an honor.
Yeah.
All right, get ready. 227,133.
133.
133, come on.
That was probably somebody that left.
Oh, wow. Bummer.
Okay, here we go. We'll do it again.
Going once, going twice. Gone. 128. 128.
Hey, hey! Come on, get it. Also, I didn't get to talk with these guys, but I'm going to say it anyhow. There's a lot of pizza left, so if you guys want to take a box home, go ahead, please, or else I'm going to eat it, and I won't look the same at the next town hall. So, anybody else?
All right. Well, thanks for coming tonight, and look forward to the next time we're together and engaging. So, appreciate it. Thank you.